Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Craig Morgan Music and More podcast. This week's podcast is brought to you by Monster Energy. They do make great energy drinks, but they also make my favorite, the Muscle Monster Shake. It is absolutely fabulous, and if you're on keto like me, it has fewer carbs than a lot of the other drinks. Great. Anyway, check it out. The shit's good. And we are grateful that they support us. And here's why, y'all. Not just because they support this podcast, but because of their support for our men and women in the armed forces. They're huge supporters of our military. So, Monster, thank you for that. And thank you for that milkshake. I love it. Hey everybody, welcome to my podcast, Music and More. I am so excited this week to have a very special guest, a gentleman that's become a very dear friend of mine, even though he was born in North Dakota. I'm just kidding. I am kidding. And we're excited. Clinton Romesha, I'll call him Clint. Clinton Romesha is a former staff sergeant in the United States Army, enlisted in 1999. Served in Iraq, Afghanistan, multiple tours and all over the place. But what makes him unique is not only the human being that he is, but he is a recipient of the Medal of Honor. And I'm excited to have him here. He's going to be talking about a book that he wrote called Red Platoon. I've read the book. I have a lot of friends that have read the book. We're going to talk about some experiences that we've had with Clinton in the past and some of his experiences outside of our relationship and how we're utilizing all of these relationships in our lives and society today. So, Clint, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me on. It's always exciting, even though we're doing this whole social distancing thing. It's always great to see your face.
Yeah, I know. I'd much rather you be sitting right beside me, man, and us talking about this. I feel like that there's something that happens when we are with each other in our lives that's not happening right now because of everything that's going on. But we'll get to that.
Yep.
Man, Red Platoon, when you first came with me, we were doing our American Stories tour. And for everybody that's watching, if you didn't ever make one of those shows, we were going to be doing that again this year, but because of COVID-19, we've canceled that tour. But what happens is I do a show and I bring on a military person, someone like Clint, who has a great story to tell. I bring on a songwriter and another artist and my daughter, who is a family member. So people get to hear different stories and different perspectives about my life. Even though Clint and I didn't serve together, we served and we share a bond that is forever embedded in our hearts and minds and souls just because we're both service members. But anyway, so and part of that was to help Clint. I don't know that he needed the help as much as I did, but we wanted to help him promote his book because this is such a fascinating story. And Clint, one of the things I loved about this book more than any other military profile book that I have read is the way that you wrote it from the different perspectives. Can you explain that to some degree for us?
You know, a lot of the process going into writing the book, like at first I really was kind of apprehensive about doing it. It just felt awkward for me. It felt, one of these situations I got put in where, it was just us doing our jobs. And so initially to get approached and do a book, of course, I'm like, you should have seen my high school English scores. There's no way, anyone that knows me knows I'm actually very literate sometimes. But as kind of time went on and talking to a lot of guys and a lot of the Gold Star families, especially the Gold Star families, they were like, look, other than listening, when you guys get together and we can kind of listen in, we really don't know what really happened to our loved ones that day. We got, a redacted 15-6 Army investigation report, and we just like to know more. And the more sitting there thinking about it, talking about it, it's like, look, I'll do a book, but it's not going to be Clint did this and Clint did that. It's going to be our story, and it's going to be the story of those 8 men that are no longer here to talk about it. It's going to be going around, and I mean, took almost 2 years to do the book, and a lot of that had to do with traveling around the country and visiting all the old guys and sitting down with them 3 or 4 days, get the recorder out, maybe crack a beer or two, and just BS like veterans do, regardless of if you serve directly with them. It's that common thread we all have running together. And a lot of times it's not about what you even say, It's kind of how you say it, the body language. And what was really beneficial for me was sitting there and realizing, even though I had Raz 2 feet away from me when something was going on, his perspective and my perspective, two different things that got kind of imprinted on us. And it was a great way to get back to, like I said, guys like Raz, Brad Larson, Lieutenant Bunderman. I got recognized on a national stage. These guys did amazing and just utterly heroic things that I now was able to give back to them. And we collected our stories, and we talked about those 8 men we lost, and going with the family, the Gold Star family members, to let them read. And that was the one thing. I'm not a very easygoing guy sometimes, and there's certain things I just won't budge on. And of course, when I told my publisher, I'm like, look, anything written about these 8 men, their families get the final say. And of course they come back and, well, you can't give them editorial, corrections like that. I'm like, no, this is their loved ones. This doesn't just get to be thrown out to the world. It's what they want people to read. Because this will, essentially once it goes in print, it's kind of like posting something on social media. It's there for time and all eternity.
It's there.
And it was just such a great blessing to be able to go through. And like I said, I was very apprehensive. Like a lot of veterans, you just kind of, sometimes when you come back from those things, you just want to put your nose to the grindstone, worry about what's going forward, which is good. But sometimes, you got to get out there and tell your story. Because if you're not telling your story, others step in and do it for you. And they don't always get it right.
That when I said, you told me how you wrote it and you went with them and collected their stories and made it a part of it. I knew at that moment that if I ever did a book, I wanted the same concept, because I love what you just said. What you seen and what they seen, even though you're in the same area, two completely different perspectives. And so I'm doing the same thing with my book as I'm working on my book. Every time I tell my story, if it involves someone else, I want that someone else to tell it from their perspective so that the readers can understand not just what I saw, but you get a much bigger picture. Your book is very, for me, very reminiscent of a movie, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's about these Secret Service agents, and this guy goes to shoot the president, and all they show throughout the whole movie is all these different people's perspectives from different video camera views and on. I can't remember what the name of that movie is called. Jerry's going to look it up, our producer. And your book is like that, and I just love that. So I got this book and I read it. I read it while we were out on tour, and it just made my heart hurt sometimes, and then other times it made it just feel like it was overflowing with joy and happiness for these people. But I sent it to my brother-in-law, and my brother-in-law wanted to know, and even after he read it, he said he read this without putting it down. He said he couldn't stop. From beginning to end, he never stopped. But he wanted to know. He had a question, and I told him I would ask you. In fact, he said his words were, even though I know the answer to this question, because I in particular in chapter 12, and we'll talk about that, but Scott wanted to know, if I can find it, he said, did you ever think, did you think that you would make it out of there?
For me, that wasn't. So every time I went overseas, I already kind of checked that block that we're not going over to do, we're not selling popsicles or handing out Girl Scout cookies. We're going over to do bad things to bad people, and they're doing them to us. My mentality wasn't about me coming back. It was about making sure the guys come back.
100%.
And it's also the mentality of knowing you're going into a situation like this where it's war. And that's war is horrifying, not glorifying. And as a leader, you got to understand, you want to bring everybody home, but you just can't sometimes. There's things out of your control. The important thing is, though, knowing that everyone's going to be there for each other. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about, bringing everybody home. And unfortunately, that comes at the price of, doesn't mean they'll be alive. And that was a big push that day, was to recover the 8 heroes that had fallen. And as we'd gotten surrounded, and just that worry, that was, like I said, I never worried about not coming home. I didn't, and I know this kind of sounds morbid, I really didn't care about living or dying in those situations. It was what was happening to everybody else. And if the roles were reversed, I knew Gallegos would come get me. I know Hart would always come get me. And the last thing you ever wanted was to lose somebody and never be able to bring that closure back home for those families.
Yeah. When we have our military group meetings, and like you said earlier, you alluded to when you're sitting around having beers and just shooting the shit, you tend to, a lot of it's body language, but you tend to talk about things, a little differently than you might with, let's say, a DJ. I tell people all the time, when you're in that environment, and you said it, and I'm going to allude to it again because I've said the exact same thing. You don't think about dying. That's not what crosses your mind. What you're thinking about is making sure no one else dies and just trying to get through this situation so we can get to the next position or the next part of our life, whatever that may be. Death was it wasn't like I was ever scared. And like you just said, you didn't think about dying. If you died.
I mean, it was always something that was looming. And it's just like any time in your life. I mean, you have that fear, the unknown, but when you let that control everything you do, you can no longer do something in a moment. When all you're thinking about is, oh man, if I step out into this, I'm going to die. It's not about, that's in your head, but you understand how to compartmentalize that in a way, but also rely on that camaraderie. And that's one of the greatest things I loved about the military. I didn't really appreciate having to wake up every morning at, dark 30 and doing more before, 6 than most people do. But that brotherhood, I mean, man, it's just something you can't duplicate, replicate, or simulate anywhere else. But having that bond where you're sleeping next to your buddies for months and days at a time, and they haven't taken showers and just embracing the stuff, as we called it. That was one of the interesting things about the book is, we're going through in there and we're talking about life at Combat Outpost Keating, like that 3 months before the attack. And we're talking about, one hot shower or one shower a week, one hot meal every 3 days, fleas all over our sleeping bags, just the incredibly harsh terrain, the odds stacked against us. And every one of the guys, after they got done telling this kind of what you would think is this just horror story of a situation, all finished it up with, that was the best 3 months of our lives. And that, just tells you right there, that positive attitude, that brotherhood, that camaraderie, man, it can get you through so much.
Yeah, and you're right. That brotherhood, that love. It really is. It's kind of weird.
Well, and a lot of people don't think, they think combat is this just anger and just hatred of something. No, for what I got to see firsthand, man, that love for your brothers to your left and your right, that love for your family, your country, just each other. That love is what gets guys, as I explain it. Duty will get a guy to go up and, hey, take this corner and enter this room, right? But that love of each other will get him to enter that room knowing there's a guy on the other end of the line with a fully automatic machine gun ready to gun him down. And he will do that because he loves you so much, not because you told him so.
Yeah. And when you say that, it reminds me of when I read in chapter 12, you talked about a situation. You had someone pinned down in a vehicle, and you had to get over there to them. And I remember in the book, you said, and I'm sorry, I'll have to paraphrase. You'll know it when I say it. He said something, and you said, I think he said something about we're going to die here, or you said that we may die here or something. But it was like in jest almost. You were like trying to be funny as y'all are being hammered by machine gun fire.
So the portion you're talking about is, Specialist Copus. This kid, loved this kid to death, man. I just can't tell you enough about Copus. So Copus is one of these stories where the path he took in life, you'd never thought would put him where he was. He was living in his, I think, cousin's closet before joining the Army. He was kind of into the drug thing. He grew up Amish, just all these little things in his past gets him up to this point. And so he's sitting in that Humvee, and at this point, he is the last fighting position in the fight. All the other ones have been disabled, destroyed, or overran. And so Copus is the only guy still in the fight on his fully automatic grenade launcher, his Mark 19, just holding off the entire enemy off the east side of the camp. And he's by himself. And I finally make it out there to go kind of check on him. And he can just kind of see it in his face and the chaos going around. And I just, hey, it's okay. We're all going to die here today. So just keep up and we'll figure it out later. One of those, hey, let's acknowledge this, but we still got fight left in us, bud. We can still do it. And that kid, Copus, sat in that Humvee for 14 hours that day. Most of the time, 90% of the time, he was absolutely alone. His radios had gotten knocked out multiple times. So not only was he physically alone, he couldn't even just hear any other American voices on the radios for hours at a time. And he still sat there in that one truck, being the prime target since it was the only one still left in the fight, and held off.
And you were talking about that love and what he did, and the things that we say in jest as soldiers. And I have to be real careful. I'm hesitant to have these kind of discussions because, like you, and we've talked about this amongst ourselves, we would never want someone who's never experienced something like that to think that we make too light of that. Because I say that in light of those that we have lost, and we know the hurt and pain that they experience in having lost loved ones. But it can be quite unsettling to think about some of the ways some of the things that we have said. And like you, in that situation, I was reading it and I could not help but laugh. I mean, we're all going to die here anyway. So let's just do what we can and hold them off as long as we can and take care of our brothers.
In those moments, I mean, it's just, hey, let's just state the obvious. I mean, let's get the elephant out of the room. Well, I mean, what else could you have said at that point in my mind?
You know, and you think about that, what y'all experienced. And I'm going to go back to that brotherly love and that passion and compassion for each other and not thinking about self. And I look at what's going on in the world, and I'm really, my heart hurts to see the anger and the disrespect just to each other. And like even in racial tension, I remember serving, and maybe you can call me ignorant. People can call me what they want. But I never felt that when not just in combat, but in general. I never felt that separation. I never felt that. I never felt it from them, and I never experienced having given it. I just had nothing but love for my brothers in arms, regardless of their skin, even their religion.
I've always looked back at it, and I can tell you this firsthand. I have never once been in a firefight where the first thing in my mind is, well, my battle buddy to my left to right is this race, this ethnicity believes in this, God has these voting preferences. It's like, no, this dude's got my back. I've got his. That's the only thing I give a care about right there. It's kind of such a weird thing because people kind of sit there and think, well, you've got to have your favorites and you've got to have your preference. And no, and those moments and that building up to those moments, because in the military, that's what we do. We train to be ready for those situations.
Yeah.
And you train like you fight. And even in training, I don't care, what your background is. Gosh, you're a damn good 249 gunner, and I'll take you on any door stack any day of the week. I don't care where you grew up from. I met guys I grew up in a very rural town of 100 people. And first time in basic, I'm meeting guys from New York City that it's like, okay, I've heard about that. I've watched it on movies. Totally different backgrounds in life. And at the end of the day, we're still going through the same process together, and you build that camaraderie. And like I said, that love. And it's like, I don't care what your background is. We're all accomplishing the same mission together, and we're doing it with each other.
Yeah, and you're right. You build that, and you get to that point to where the other things seem so irrelevant. And I wish we could package that. I wish we could put that into a formula where people who aren't experienced in that elements or in that arena, I wish they could somehow understand that so that they could come to a point in their lives where they could not be so hateful and not be so ugly to one another.
Oh, I don't know. I've always had a vision on that. The greatest thing about the military, what it gives you, is more perspective. Like I said, I joined right at 18. I was tired of milking cows and digging fence posts for my dad. So my initial entry into the military was not to go, it was 1999. 9/11 wasn't even on the horizon. We were at relative peace. And I grew up in my own little world, and I thought that's what the world was. And immediately getting into the military, you get exposed to so many different walks of life, so many different perspectives, and you don't kind of get encapsulated into that tight little bubble of people you always want to associate with that have the same views, same opinions, because it's really hard at times to break out of that. And wow, this is what's going on in your life. And like I said, meeting kids from the big city. Well, I never had those issues. I've left my keys in my truck every time I want to, run into the gas station. What do you mean you got to lock up your car 8 different ways? And, okay, well, there is more stuff around the world than just my little bubble. And the military has always been great about exposing you to that.
Yeah, I think that's 100%. That's another thing that I always allude to. As a soldier, you have the opportunity to experience so many cultures and even the different cultures within our own country. And to be a part of that, it just gives you such a great deal of appreciation of how fortunate we are. And I say that all the time, and I know you know that better than most, even most that have served. And we both have lost friends in these conflicts over time. And I'm just grateful that we have them and their families that serve them when they're gone, and those that continue to serve and sign up. We're going to get off the book. I am going to tell everybody, go get this book. If you want to truly read something that will inspire you, and I mean that, this will inspire you to want to be kind and to be grateful. So get the book and check it out. Tell me something. When you guys were over there, did you listen to much music when you're in downtime? What little downtime you may have?
That goes back to, so I grew up country music. You know that. Yeah. That was one of our vents. That's one of our outlets. And the great thing about being in the military is, I got introduced to hardcore death metal stuff because the guys I'd hang out with, I would have never listened to that music before, but it was always great to see how music really connected each other and how it always gave us that time to reflect, and how there's always those songs that you just come on and it just brings you to a place and you're like, man, life is good. Life is great.
Yeah, and I love that. When we've done USO shows, I'm using your stuff to talk about how we put these all together. But when we've done USO shows, I've always been fascinated to have people come up to me after a show and go, I've never listened to country before, but man, I love that song. I'm like, well, maybe you should listen to more country. Oh man, I listen to heavy metal, or I listen to rap, or I listen to R&B, or I listen to rock. I don't listen to any of this hillbilly stuff. And then they come and they go, I really like that. And so you're exactly right. That music does that. And when we were out on tour, I remember, I don't remember what town, I don't remember what it was, but we were on stage and you had come out, you were our guest that weekend. And I had someone come up to me after the show with tears in their eyes because you had told a story. And I remember you were real, you were really, like, it was very short. You didn't talk a lot. I tried to pull more out of you when we were on stage. But that grown man had tears in his eyes talking about what that meant to him, what you had said to him, and how it related to our lives now. And I really thank you for that in this book and your life, your story. And thank you, more importantly, Bud. I mean, I'm saying this sincerely. For sharing it. In our world, in the military, you said something earlier, like you didn't want to do that. And I respect that. I get it. Because none of us as soldiers want to capitalize off of what we experienced. It was our job, and we did it for that reason. But if you can tell it, and as you're doing, in a way that brings a positive light to those, especially those that we have lost, but as well those who have lived, who might not get the opportunity.
There's so many like I said, so many unsung heroes how many guys and girls today that are still, that's what I look back to. I think back to my dad. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. Vietnam was a time in our country where it was not a very popular war. The draft was still going on. Guys were getting told, you either go over to Nam or you go to jail. And I look at my generation, when I joined, we're an all volunteer force. And still, 20 years later now, we've had the global war of terrorism going on, and you still have amazing men and women of this country that'll put up that right hand volunteering to go and put on the cloth of this nation's uniform and still go and serve. And it's just so inspiring to see that still going on today, how well we treat our veterans, but we can always do more, how we respect them, and how we as veterans also need to get out there and share these stories. So, because like I said, if we don't, they're going to be forgotten, and they might not get told, the way we directly experienced them, and getting the messages out there that we don't fight out of anger or hate, we fight out of love. And it's so amazing to see that.
Okay. So saying that and keeping that in mind, when we talk to each other as soldiers, especially someone who's experienced something like yourself, sometimes I'll just cold call you and go, I use the term, and I think I know you'll know, but we use the term headspace and timing. How's your headspace and timing? Or sometimes we'll just say headspace. So for those that don't know, headspace and timing is on a 50 caliber machine gun in particular. If your headspace and your timing are not adjusted properly, your weapon will not feed the ammunition through there right. So when we say that to each other, what it means is, like, if you're not thinking right, things ain't gonna be firing right. You're not on cue. So how is you look good. You have a much, and how long has it been since we did American Stories with Clint?
Shoot, was that 2 years ago? What?
So 2 years ago. I'm going to tell you, in 2 years.
Time flies, Craig.
Yeah, but you look good, man. I remember at that time, I felt like your headspace and timing wasn't just perfect. It wasn't off. You weren't bad.
That was a few years back. I was going through some things in my life, and of course, being very private and personal.
Yep.
But going out on tour to sit there and being able to talk to you and talk to my battle buddies, you guys can pick up right away, hey, something's a little off. And at times I know that's one of the hardest things for me, is that stubbornness of, I've been through so much. I'm so tough. No one can help me but me. Yeah. And there's those times like I need the help. I need something. I don't know what I need, but I know I need to reach out. And you always have those guys there that 24/7, day or night, halfway across the country, they're there.
Well, I know you're that guy too, buddy. I know you're that guy, and thank you for being that. Thank you for being willing to humble yourself, to know that we can't do it all ourselves, and we're not perfect, because I think that a lot of times helps those other guys. And I thank you for that. I thank you for being who you are. You're a shining light in our world. And I'm not being cheesy or nothing. You're also a goofball sometimes, and I love that. And but I say all this because I recently wrote a song, and we released it as a single, called "The Mask." And I think about that, and I wanted to ask you, is it easier for you to take the mask off now than it used to be? That mask that we put on to kind of hide our emotions or certain things. Does it get easier for you?
It has. And part of that has been being able to go out on tour with you, Craig, and share that story. Because like I said, when I got out, I transitioned out of the military. In my mind, I was like, I shut that chapter in my life. I put it in this little box, and I put it in this shelf way back here in my mind. And I don't think I ever want to open that again. And then almost overnight, getting told, hey, you're receiving the medal. You're now on a national stage. It's like all of that came flooding back at once. And when I was up here in North Dakota working the oil fields, like none of the guys, they knew I was a veteran. They had no idea what I'd done. And almost overnight, it's like, this quiet little Clint that doesn't say much of anything, you did what? You're this. And all of a sudden you're faced with it. And at first, like I said, that was part of not wanting to do the book. Those stories were just so ingrained in my heart that it's like I can't share that with anybody. That was so much pain at times, but as time has gone on and taken that mask off, there was so much joy and so many great memories and so many opportunities now to honor those that, like I said, aren't here to tell their stories. So the mask can come off much easier now than it used to. And I think we all should be striving to, be able to understand that it's okay to let that out. It's okay to share that. It's okay to take that off. You can be the hardest and just the most badass person that everyone thinks, But if deep down inside, that's not you, that's where you're hurting. You can't keep that front on, because all you're doing is you're just hurting yourself in the long run. You can't take care of yourself. How can you take care of your men?
Well, yeah, now that you've said that, and this is the Music and More podcast. The more is more fun for me, believe it or not, than the music. But we're going to reconfigure real quick, and Mike and I are going to play this song, The Mask, and we're going to dedicate it to you and all those that serve and have served. And I want to tell any veteran that's out there watching this, it's okay to take the mask off. And there's a lot of guys that you can share that moment with who will truly understand and appreciate what you're experiencing. So don't be scared to do that. I will tell you this, though, and I mean this. That's not something, you can't take that mask off in front of just anyone because they're not going to understand when you talk about some of the horrific things. They just won't grasp that. And I mean, Clint, you agree? I mean, Absolutely. I don't tell my wife everything that I experienced in my military career. In fact, she don't know about most of it because there's images that she can't grasp without having maybe even having a negative impression.
Yeah. Well, and you start towing the line as a veteran of the frustration of trying to get that off your chest to someone, like I said, that doesn't have just any comprehension. It was like my dad. I had served for many years in the Army. He didn't share his first Vietnam story with me until my first time coming back from my first combat deployment.
Wow.
Then he opened up and I heard about some of that stuff. And it's like, we had it was just that unsung kind of truth of, what I know without me telling you what I know.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to reconfigure real quick and play this song, then we'll be right back. Like I was telling Clint, this is a song that I wrote. And thanks again, Clint, by the way, for hanging out while we do this. We wrote this before COVID-19, really. So it's called The Mask, but it's not about a physical mask. It's about that mask that we all put on, the front that we put on in order to get through the day sometimes. And we released it to iTunes for download. It is available. You can download it. Because I really felt like a lot of our first responders, law enforcement officers, especially our military, but those people share a gene, and they all have to put on a mask sometimes in their lives on a regular basis just to get through their day. It's kind of dedicated to them, but I also realize that people just in our everyday lives, no matter what you do in your life, sometimes you have to put on a front just to get through your day because you've experienced something traumatic or something bad that makes you struggle with it. But so anyway, here it is. We're going to dedicate it to everybody tonight. Hey, I got pains inside of me, pains I don't let people see. I say I'm fine 'cause I know they see me strong. Behind my eyes, inside my soul, feels like I'm digging a deeper hole. I put on a smile, I lie and I hold on. 'Cause when I get home and it's late at night, no one's around and I turn off the light, I cry and scream and yell like a crazy man. I don't have to pretend that I'm doing well. I can tell the world it can go to hell. It's just me and God when I take off the mask. They say you got so much going on, but in this crowd I'm still alone. But they don't know 'cause I hold my head up high. Sometimes I can't get out of bed, I'm going round and round inside my head. That's when I slip it on so I can hide. But when I get home and it's late at night, no one's around and I turn off the light, I cry and scream and yell like a crazy man. I don't have to pretend that I'm doing well. I can tell the world it can go to hell. It's just me and God when I take off the mask. I won't give up, I won't give in. I I won't take it all till I'm with him. Yeah, when I get home and it's late at night, no one's around and I turn off the light, I cry and scream and yell like a crazy man. I don't have to pretend that I'm doing well. I can tell the world it can go to hell. It's just me and God when I take off the mask. Oh yeah, when I take off the mask. There you go. I'm going to finish up with Clint, and we're going to come back and talk about songwriting. All right, well, we're back. Like I said, I actually wrote that song before everything happened with COVID, so it wasn't about that. It's about the mask that you and I were talking about. Again, thank you so much for being here. Speaking of COVID, how have you been? I mean, have you managed to stay healthy and stay away from it, or what's going on?
You know, I do have to say, one of the benefits of being from a state like North Dakota, when your population density is only one person per 12 square miles, by default, we are pretty. No, it's been good. The family's been healthy. They've been well. In some ways, it's been, a little frustrating because you're kind of cooped up at times. But in other ways, you get to spend the time with the family. We get to have, I wouldn't call it forced time, mandatory time together, but just sitting there and having meals at the dinner table, going out and working. We've been working on our backyard quite a bit and showing the kids how to run a string line and pull proper squares on things and giving them kind of those, what I call life skills. Instead of having to hire a construction guy every time you need to do a little something, you can figure it out yourself. And those little family life lessons that I think parents need to pass on to their kids has been a blessing. And I always like to look at the positive. You can look at all the negative stuff going on with this, but you really got to try to find the positive, and when you do, your experience will be much, much more beneficial.
That's awesome, buddy. So have you had anybody close to you test positive? Anybody you know?
I have not yet.
Okay. Well, then the next...
it's been a blessing. And
well, that's good. Of course, you are in North Dakota where there's 12 square miles for every one person. Our next little bit, we're going to be talking to a bunch of my friends and a bunch of people I know that have actually tested positive for COVID, and we're going to find out their symptoms, talk to them, and I want you to hear it straight from them, not from the doctor, not from some government official. You're going to hear it from the people that got it, and you're going to be surprised. It varies what they've dealt with, so we'll be right back with that. All right. Thank you, bro.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Craig.
Man, I love you, buddy. You look good, dude. I'm proud for you. Stay in touch with me.
I trimmed down a little bit, so it always looks like I lose weight when I trim the beard.
Yeah, that last picture, dude, your beard was huge.
Oh, man, that thing was massive.
COVID
it's summertime, too, so it's time to get some of that extra hair off.
Yeah.
It's too hot. Well, I can't wait to see you again, and I can't wait till we go out on tour. Miss you guys. Really
next year, we're going to have you back.
Well, Larson, when we stopped in Nebraska, that was 2 years ago, and Larson came down. Man, what a great reunion to have the ability, and then going to see my mom and out in Oregon. I tell you what, Craig, so many great memories being on tour with you.
Thank you, buddy. Great. We're going to do it again.
I've been trying to practice a little bit, but yeah, my singing still sucks.
All right, we're going to let him go on that one right there. I'm kidding, buddy. You be careful, brother.
All right, you do the same,
See
Craig.
You, bud.
Give everyone my best.
Bye-bye. We are back with music and more. And so I said in the last segment that we were going to be talking to some friends and family and people that I know that have literally tested positive with COVID, because I want to see what's going on. It's one thing to hear it on the news and hear a doctor talking about it, but I want to hear it from my friends. And I got a buddy of mine, Wes. He's in D.C. right now. He's from Hawaii. He is my aloha brother. He is like family to us now. We have traveled doing some things together, and I just love this guy. Wes, how you feeling, buddy?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I haven't tested positive. You did.
I did. I tested positive a couple months ago. But here I am. I'm good. I'm healthy. I'm well as me, and you'd have never known that I had it before.
Did you experience any or all of the symptoms when it first came about?
Most of them actually. So I started off with the sniffles, and it happened pretty quickly. Once I started getting the symptoms, so I had the sniffles, had the runny nose. Then the next day I started losing my voice, and then I started coughing, and then the chills, the fever all kicked in, and then the dreading of diarrhea, nonstop coughing, and that lasted actually for about 5 to 6 days of being down hard with all of those. And probably around the 7th, 8th day, everything else started, I lost the fever, everything was coming back. Pretty much what hung around the longest for maybe around 16 days, little over 2 weeks, was the cough. But everything else had drifted off about the 6th day or so.
And
so for me, it was like as if you had the flu or something. I never had, hard time of breathing or anything like that.
so it was more like the flu, an extended version of the flu for you.
Yes.
And how old are you?
41.
What's your blood type?
B positive. And that's what I'm always am.
You got to be positive, right? Man,
That's
I love
right,
you. Well,
that's right.
Yeah, you look good, bro.
Oh man, you too, man. That's what I said. Like you would have never thought I had it or anything like that. So I'm one of the very lucky ones. I'm very fortunate that, even though I did get it, that it wasn't severe like some other people has gotten it.
Right.
Hospitalized or even worse that, I passed on.
So
I'm very grateful for that.
when was that when you came? When did you test? When did you feel the symptoms and get tested? How did that order go? Did you get tested first or?
I got tested after. So I came down with the symptoms, and because of where I work, because of what I do, ended up getting tested after, probably it was like the week after I got tested.
Okay.
Of having symptoms. And then, 2 days later, I found out, tested positive.
And that
Did
was
the whole quarantine and all of that.
And that was in March?
In March, yeah. It was probably the second week of March. Second week of March is when I started the symptoms, and then third week is when I got tested.
Yeah, because I remember we talked because I was with you early in the second week of March. In fact, I have a picture that I'm going to post up here. I want people to see of me standing with you, and I come home, and then a few days later I get a call, and I'm like, oh my gosh! But I never got it. I never. We even tested just here a while back. We got tested for the antibodies because I just assumed that I had to have had it after being so close. But I attribute the fact that we didn't get it to Jerry, our tour manager, who you know. He made us sanitize every time I shook someone's hand. I mean, every time we do anything, it's like, oh, we got to do this. And Jerry, he wouldn't let us walk away without me putting that stuff on my hands. And then when we finished for the evening, he's like, go wash your hands with some soap, and then we'll come back down and have a drink or whatever. But you look great. Have you been tested for the antibodies after the fact?
Yeah, and I just got the administered so far. So I was excited about that. And then just this morning, I got another test just to, do a follow-up and see how that goes. So we'll find out, tomorrow, and, that I'm still good to go. I mean, I feel great, no symptoms, and been same just like you, sanitizing, keeping clean, keeping the distance. Just, not only for myself, but for our family, for our friends, people that we, coworkers, protecting them as well at the same time.
Well, you look good, man. I really appreciate you calling in and telling everybody, kind of what your experience was. And I think it's important that people hear it, straight from the source, so to speak. But you look good, and I'm happy to see you. I can't wait till it settles to some degree so that we can get back together, my friend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Heck yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to doing more things.
All right, bro. We love you. Aloha.
Love you. Aloha, man. Have a great one, everyone.
All right, bro.
Bye.
Well, there you have it, straight from the source. One of them, we're going to talk to 2 or 3 more. We're going to get some more on the phone, and I just want y'all to hear it from them because we've been talking to them. I haven't really, quite honestly, we haven't talked to Wes to understand the degree in which he had held on to it. I didn't think his was quite that long. When I initially talked to him, he made like it only lasted like 2 or 3 days. And then you heard there, it was a couple of weeks that he had these flu-like symptoms, but never shortness of breath. So I think obviously it varies. So that's kind of in line with what we're being told. All right, well, Jerry, I want to talk to you about this. So you went to a birthday party here a while back. I did. And someone at the birthday party, you hadn't been anywhere. You had not gone anywhere. Like you were like, and I tell people, listen, y'all, I'm not making this up, and I'm not making fun of Jerry by any means. I just want y'all to understand how severe Jerry thought this was. He was like, he didn't even want us to go to Washington, D.C. to do this event because he was afraid that we would get sick. And this was March 10th, so that tells you how early it was. And Jerry had gotten sick in January, and we now know for a fact that this virus was here in January. We know that. It was already here. And Jerry got really sick, sicker than he had ever been, and had very flu-like symptoms, and he was down in bed. So when we went there, Jerry was super conscious about it. Like I said when I was talking earlier, he made sure every time we shook someone's hand or took a picture or did anything, he wanted us to keep our hands clean, and he just didn't want Mike and I
still do.
And I don't think he was worried about us as much as he didn't want us to get it and make him sick. But it worked. I believe that. I really attribute us not getting sick to the hygiene habits that we started then, early on. And I have since flown to Alaska and back and managed to do it unscathed. And I attribute it to the fact that we're just doing social distancing and hygiene and all the things that are needed. So shortly after, though, or just recently, Jerry, not having done anything, decides he's going to go to this birthday party. It's a family event only. And what happened, Jerry?
Well, I won't name any names, but as you know, and you know me very well, I've been very cautious about this, like you said. And I've been in my house, stuck in my house. I make my wife go to the grocery store. I don't even go to Kroger with her because I don't want to get it. She comes home, she has mask on, I make her throw that stuff away, hand sanitizer, all that jazz, right? But, so I went to a birthday party over to a family member's house, and he had some other people come over. It was his son's birthday party. And this couple that came over dropped their son off earlier in the day, and then they come over late at night. Well, myself and the rest of my family was there, and didn't think nothing about it. Had a party, left, okay? So I think that time frame from where I left that party on a Saturday, I did a couple different things with you, some live streams,
yep.
Right? And so evidently this individual got tested on a Wednesday, and then on a Friday told my family member that he tested positive for COVID.
And what day was the birthday party?
The birthday party was the Saturday before, so that was 6 days.
Yeah, 6 days from the time he tested, or?
3 days from the time he tested to where I knew about it.
Yeah.
Right. So time frame, birthday
party. So the
party,
point is, he could have very well had it then.
100%.
100%.
Yeah. Or, I mean, he could have got it from the party from us. Now, that being said, there's a couple people in my family who's been tested that were at that party and are negative.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't tested yet.
I know.
I probably should, but it was so long in that time frame that it was already 14 days. I said, it was 8 days at that time, and I said, I'm just going to wait and see if I get any symptoms, and if I do, I'll go get tested. Still hadn't had a symptom. Hadn't had a symptom from the time we were in D.C. with each other. Like you said, in February, I was sick. I mean, the sickest I've been in my entire life. 3 days of being in bed with 103 temperature. Could not get out if I wanted to. Finally got out, another 7 or 8 days of congestion and problems breathing. But I kind of attest that to my history of asthma. But since then, I've been fine, you know. Yeah,
so the point is, you can avoid this if you practice these hygiene, sanitize, keep your hands clean, stay away. And I would even go as far as to say, wear a mask, but that's mainly really to keep you from getting it out to somebody. But if someone has a mask on, they're not going to be able, if they do cough, not as much of that's going to get out. That's why the mask thing, and I believe that too. But what we do, just so y'all know, when we do something like that, like when I went to Alaska, I went into quarantine when I got there. And within 10 days, I hadn't felt nothing. Fine. 14 days later, 15 days, I fly home. When I got home, I didn't go anywhere or do anything for like 10 days, 12 days. I made sure that in that time of being around other people, even though I was still maintaining social distancing, because you can do it. On Delta Airlines, it was every other seat. So I wasn't close enough to anybody. And traveling through the airport, we maintained our distance and wore a mask. And I had hand sanitizer with me, so if I went into the restroom, I would hand sanitize. I actually wash my hands and hand sanitize before I piss, y'all, because I ain't touching nothing with something that's been touching something else, if you know what I'm saying. So we made sure. And then we hand sanitize throughout the whole thing. So I think it can be done. You just got to do those things. Having said that, the degree of effect that it has on us, I think, depends on a lot of things. Your health, pre-existing conditions. Now even it looks like maybe blood type might have some effect. So now we're going to get another friend on the phone that has also experienced COVID-19. This person, we all believe, got it at the same time as the last person, same time frame. And I just want to hear from her perspective. So now we've heard from a male, 41 years old, healthy, what it did to him. Now we're going to hear from a female. I might not be able to ask her age. That's kind of disrespectful, they say, to ask a woman her age, but I don't know. And hear from her perspective what she experienced as soon as she gets on the phone. And again, we're talking about this because it's really hard to decipher all this information that we're receiving, what's going on. Mike, who you seen me do the song with a while ago, Mike has been doing some things. He was at an event. Hell, he was on a microphone this far away from another guy, and he ain't got it. But the thing is, we know for the most part those people. Like I come in here with Jerry, but I know Jerry's been in quarantine. I know where he's been. I know what he's done. I know what Mike's done. So when we do get together, like Mike just did a thing. He just had a live stream with this project that he's doing. So when Mike came in, we said, don't touch nothing. I mean, and he respects it. He's not touching anything. And he's basically quarantined himself for 14 days after that event just to make sure. So in the next 10 to 12 days, if he gets sick, he'll go get tested and we'll know. But that's what we're doing. And I think that's really about the best you can do. That's really all you can do, is to avoid it any time. We can't avoid it altogether, guys. We have to live our lives. But if you can, if there's precautions that you can take, if it's not necessary for you to do something in order to live your life, then you should do those things. And that's what we're all trying to do. Is it ringing? Who?
Hi there.
Hey, that's better. We can't see your pretty face, but we can hear you.
Oh, well, thank you, Craig. I'm in my car, so I apologize, but I was out running errands.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So on this week's podcast, I've been talking to friends, people that we know who have tested positive for COVID. I just talked to one of my friends, a man of 41 years of age, healthy, and he talked about what he experienced. And I'm telling everybody that's watching, it's one thing to hear the doctors talk about it and to see it on the news, but it's another thing when you hear it straight from the source. So when you experience this, how long from the time that you suspected you might have it did you test, and what was your experience like?
Well, so I started getting symptoms like 4 days after I believe I was exposed, but I never did get tested because I had it so early, in the second week of March, that I couldn't even get tested in Las Vegas. But I've had 2 positive antibody tests since then. But I went through all the symptoms, so I knew when I was going through it that I had it.
So what were your symptoms? How long did they last?
Well, I lost my taste and smell. So that was the weirdest thing. I actually even Googled it. That's how I know what day I did it, because I was like, why can't I taste or smell anything? I thought I was having allergies, because back then they weren't talking about that symptom. And then a couple days after that, I got the cough, and then I got the fever and the tiredness and the headache and all of that, probably 8 days in.
And on the 8th, after 8 days, was it a slow progress to get back to 100%, or did you, like, in 8 days you got better and you're like, okay, now I can go run?
Well, my fever and my cough, my fever lasted 4 days, and the tiredness, I kind of slept for 4 days. One day I slept 18 hours. My Fitbit told me.
Wow.
But I just slept and slept, and then And then the cough, it's a cough like you've never had. It's a wheezy, dry cough from the bottom of your lungs. And that lasted 3 weeks.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
and I think, I work out pretty regularly, and I can hike, I can do anything. And I had no lung capacity for probably a good 4 to 6 weeks. I just had to, I would go out and take a mile walk, which normally I would take a 5-mile walk. I would take a mile walk and I'd be exhausted.
Oh, wow.
So it took like 4 to 6 weeks for the lungs to fully come back. But now I'm 100%, I feel great now, but it was a different experience, that I've never had that kind of illness before.
Well, in doing this comparison, I know it's rude to ask a lady her age. No one can see you, so you can tell me.
I'm 57, so I'm like right at the brink of that magical 60, crisis age group. So.
And yet,
Yeah.
so would you attribute the fact that you recovered the way you did to your health, the fact that you're a healthy person?
Yes, and I also take a lot for immune support because you know how much I travel. I travel the world, and I'm always taking different things for immune support, and so I think that helped dramatically.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the other friends that I had it, that got it. One of them got it really, really bad, and so just people, just everyone has a different reaction to it. That's the strange part about this illness, about this virus. Is everyone has a different experience with it.
So now that you've had it, do you have some sense of comfort with the antibodies? You feel like you're good for a while?
So it's funny you said that. I've had the 2 positive tests. I'm going to have 1 more next month because I'm just going, my doctor can do it at his office, and we're just going to check to see if I still have IgGs, which are the strong antibodies, because now they're saying that they again, Craig, they don't know because not enough time has passed, but they're thinking that they're going to the antibodies will start getting weaker as time goes on, and they're thinking that it's going to be a yearly occurrence. Like this vaccine is going to be when they make the vaccine, it'll be like a yearly vaccine. They're thinking like the flu shot.
Yeah.
Because the antibodies aren't for life, like with other viruses you have that you have it one time and that's it. But they're thinking that this is going to be. So I'm just being careful. I'm still being cautious when I'm out and careful. And I'll just continue to be that way. So just to make sure.
Well, I'm really glad that you're okay. We love you, you know that, and we
Of course.
can't wait to get back out with you and travel with you and do some things. And
absolutely.
You just said it might be like the flu. This is a coronavirus. The flu is a coronavirus.
Yeah.
So,
no, you're absolutely right.
So there are a lot of those similarities. The difference is, like you said, the way it affects people differently.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad you're okay. I can't thank you enough for coming on and telling everybody what you experienced.
Of course. And you guys stay safe. God bless you all.
Oh, we will, honey. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, bye-bye.
Well, we got one more person that we're going to talk to. And I'm going to tell you, this is the third one. I did talk to 2 other people that aren't going to call. One was a female in her late 30s. She had 3 days total time of feeling some symptoms. Scratchy throat. She had a light fever for less than 24 hours. And then on the 3rd day, she started feeling better. And she said by the 4th day, she had no symptoms and was fine. And she tested positive. Just so you know, 3 of the 5 people that I talked to were with us on March the 10th. And you notice 2 of those that we have talked to discussed the fact that they tested within 3 days after we were all together. Again, a testament to the personal hygiene and social distancing and washing and all those things. I believe that. I really believe that's going to make a big difference in the spread of the coronavirus. But that's what we wanted to talk about this week. I'm going to try my buddy one more time, who I served in Panama with, to see. Here we go. I'm calling him up. The one whose voicemail was full a while ago.
Hello.
Mike, it's Craig.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, buddy, I got you on my podcast via audio since I didn't get in touch with you. I just want to talk to you. So I was saying that you texted me to wish me a happy birthday and I asked you how you were doing. You said you were just getting over COVID. And ironically enough, today's podcast, I'm talking about the virus and how it's affecting people differently. So tell me what your experience was from the time you thought you might have it until it was gone. Tell me the timeline.
Well, it took about 2 weeks and a half before I started getting all my energy back. But when I first had it, I thought, man, am I just getting lazy because I retired? But because I would do something, and then I'd say, I need to lay down. And then 2 days after that happened, I started running a fever. And then I got tested. But, of course, it took like over a week. It took 6 days before they said it was positive. But I knew I had it because I never felt so drained in my life.
So how long after? So I'm trying to get the timeline here. So the initial symptoms. What were the first symptoms where you said, I don't feel good?
Yeah. So it was okay. So June 27th was Saturday when I got checked. The Friday, 26th, 25th, like the 23rd, Wednesday, the 23rd of June, I just started feeling real tired. I would do something, and then I would have to lay down, and I didn't know. And I didn't put two and two together until I started running a fever. And then I said, this has got to be COVID. But I didn't have a cough, but I had it was like super bad body ache and joint ache all over my body. So it was like worse than the flu. And also I had a pretty severe abdominal pain in my like left upper quadrant, right near my stomach. So so that was and bad headache in the beginning.
But so you covered the gamut of the symptoms they talk about, except for, did you have problems breathing?
No, I didn't have any respiratory issues, and I did not have what's the other big one? Cough. I didn't really have a cough. But later 10 days later, I started getting diarrhea for a couple of days, about 2 or 3 days.
Well, that could have been the food you ate.
Who knows? But yeah. So so that was.
How old are you, Mike?
A little older than you. I'm 56, but I'll be 57 in October.
Yeah, so you're at that age where some people think it starts to get worrisome. Really, though, they've kind of moved it up. I noticed on CDC's website, it's like 70 and over now.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have comorbidities, the big ones are if you're obese or diabetic, or if you have respiratory issues, or any kind of autoimmune disorder, you're at risk.
Well, you know a lot about this because you're in the medical field. Hey, do you think you know how or where you got it, or no?
You know, that I'm not sure about. I drove my car up to Delaware to dump off one car, and then I flew back. So it's possible that I got it on the plane, but there was also movers in the house, and there was repair people in the house. So that weren't wearing masks, so we could have got it. Although masks, that's debatable about that. So.
But you feel better now. You're good now.
Oh yeah, man. I've been doing yard work all week, I feel good.
Well, man, I'm glad to know you're well. I was kind of shocked when you told me that because, we have a lot of other friends, not a lot of other people, but man, I'm glad to know you're well, my friend.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a germaphobe. I wash my hands and make sure I don't touch my face, but I still got it.
Yeah, it can happen. Well, I was just telling everybody that, a buddy of mine that I served with in Panama, a guy whose life I saved like 10 times and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't hear that last part. I'm sorry. It must have been a joke.
I was just telling everybody how I saved your life in Panama like 10 times.
Oh, yeah, you probably did. Yeah.
You can't recall that though, huh?
I'm sure you did. Yeah. Well,
I'm
old,
teasing.
So I don't remember.
I'm just kidding. I love you, buddy. I am glad to know you're all right. And I appreciate you calling in and sharing that with us because I wanted people to hear it from the source, people that I know.
All right, but don't be scared. Open the damn economy.
We won't. All right, buddy.
All right, I'll see you.
See you, brother.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. That's 3 or 4 people that we know personally, and you've heard their experiences. A lot of similarities in the time span. That's the big thing. So you hear sometimes on the news that it's 3 days and this, and I've only talked to one person out of the 12 that I know personally that have had it, that it was that short. The rest of them, it can go on for a couple of weeks. With the severe flu-like symptoms lasting 4 or 5 days, and it was the same across the board. So keep your hands clean, do what you got to do, and man, get back to life. I've said this: I'd rather die trying to live than live dying. I want to live. I'm not out here to try to kill myself, or it ain't that I don't care about living, but I think we need to live our lives. So we got to get back to living our lives, and there's ways to do it, and it's by adhering to the social distancing when you can and where you can, and being sanitary. Don't put your hands in your face and nose, and that's what it's hard to do. It's hard to not pick your nose sometimes, especially if you got one back up in there. But there's ways to do it. Jerry said, So keep it in mind. Check us out next time when we have our next podcast, and we'll let you know what it's going to be ahead of time from now on. We'll talk about what's coming up on our podcast. You're watching the Craig Morgan Music and More. All right, so, boy, I really can't say how much I really appreciate Clint being here and talking about the book, his experience, life, and sharing all that with us. So next podcast, we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about songwriting. I want to spend a little more time on the music on the next podcast. But before we do, I want to give you a little taste of what we're going to talk about. So Mike and I have been writing together for a long time. We've written a bunch of hits. Been really blessed to have that happen. There's 2 things that I think are very important when we talk about songwriting. Number one, you got to have a great subject. You need a good subject. So when you sit down, if you're a songwriter, guys, we call them hooks.
That's right.
Something to write about. And if you don't have a great hook, then you better have a great melody. So, and then it's really about putting those 2 things together. And we've done this quite a few times over the years. In shows, we've kind of made stuff up to show people how it goes. But next week, we're going to actually sit down, and we're going to start something right now that next week we'll finish, and I'll talk about the entire process. But what I like to do is, especially with writing with Mike, I love to hear him play something and make something up melodically. I think he has a great melodic sense. He's not real sharp in other areas in life, but he's a great melody guy. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. He's a great songwriter. He really is, especially in the bluegrass world. He's won a lot of awards in that arena writing songs. But I think his real strength is in his melodies, and that's where we try to put it together. So, Mike, I'm thinking of a lower mid-tempo.
I'm a clean slate right now.
I have no idea what we're going to play or say or sing. I don't even have a hook. So I'm hoping that the melody will drive me lyrically and give me, I like this, and give me an idea.
I'm just looking.
So you know what I like about this is one of the people that we talked to was my Hawaiian brother, Wes, and that has a Hawaiian feel to some degree, don't it? No, do what you're doing. Not that much. Yeah. I love it. Don't get too fast.
Yeah.
So, man, I love this melody, and it has that islandy feel without being islandy. So, and what we do as songwriters, a lot of times our influence in what's happening in our lives impacts it. And so talking to West and feeling that aloha love, I feel that right now. So we're going to take this to the island maybe, to their island, to some degree. And let me feel it. There we go. As the wind blows through the palm trees, I feel her. So much love that has come and gone. I can't help but think I wish she was sitting right here with me. Instead, she's gone. Yeah, she's gone. We'll finish this next time on our next podcast. See you next week. Thanks for watching the Craig Morgan Music and More podcast and listening to it. And if you're listening now, that means you hung on to the end, and we thank you. Show your support by downloading this, sharing it with all your friends, and doing all of that, because when you do that, you get to help us help Operation Finally Home, providing mortgage-free homes for our men and women in the service. God bless you, and thank you.